Hello and welcome to the latest discussion from GIE Media's Manufacturing Group, the value of AI in MedTech from startup to operational excellence to mergers and acquisitions, as we're joined by MedWorld Advisors. I'm Jake Kaufman, the senior editor for the group, and before we get started, we'd like to thank our 2026 webinar series sponsors, Kennametal and Heimer USA. Kennametal has been cutting metal since 1938. It's a story of continuous innovation, starting with the development of revolutionary tungsten titanium carbide alloyed cutting tools specifically for working with steel. This not only led to a new class of machining tools that cut faster, lasted longer, and drove productivity in everything from the automobile to the airplane, but also to Kennametal's recognition as an industry leader across continents and industries, including transportation, construction, aerospace and defense, medical, general manufacturing, and more. They don't cut corners, they cut metal. Your toughest materials don't stand a chance. You can learn more at kennametal.com. And Heimer USA is the North American subsidiary of a family-owned mid-sized company headquartered in Ingenhausen, Bavaria. The company develops, manufactures, and distributes high-precision products for metal cutting industries, serving aerospace, medical, energy, mold and die, and general engineering markets. Its product portfolio includes premium tool holders, solid carbide cutting tools, and advanced shrinking, balancing, and presetting machines, along with 3D measuring technology. Operating from a 30 or 40,000 square foot facility in Villa Park, Illinois, Heimer USA provides local inventory, technical support, and training, supported by a decentralized network of sales and service engineers across the United States, Canada, and Mexico. We're happy to be joined today by Daniel Shepard, who has spent nearly 2 decades advising founding or founder-owned medtech and finance companies and mergers and acquisitions, corporate finance, and strategic growth initiatives. He's currently a managing director at MedWorld Advisors. Daniel joined the team in 2016. We also have Dave Shepard, who has been a leader in the medical device industry for more than 30 years. His experience includes positions such as GM and VP, as well as high-impact sales and marketing leadership roles at major Fortune 500 corporations, and also work at startup organizations. As managing director at MedWorld Advisors, Shepard has focused on exit strategies for med device, biotech, dental tech, digital health tech, OEM, med tech, and everything else in the healthcare industry. Throughout today's discussion, you can ask both Dan and Dave questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom screen. We'll try to answer as many as possible before we wrap things up today, but I'll hand things off now to Dan and Dave. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your time today. I appreciate it and look forward to the presentation.
Jake, thank you. That was a mouthful. But glad you got through it. Well, welcome everybody to the webinar. As mentioned by Jake, I'm Dave Shepard, co-founder, managing director of MedWorld Advisors, and I'm joined by Daniel Shepard. I'll let Daniel say hello.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, Daniel Shepard, Managing Director of MedWorld Advisors based out of San Francisco, and look forward to talking a little bit more about how AI is impacting the MedTech world today.
So we can get into it because Jake gave us a nice overview of what we do. We do obviously contribute to today's medical developments. So when you get a chance, please check in and read some of the contributions that we make to TMD. It's an excellent journal. And we look forward to talking about AI and MedTech today. There's a lot of talk about AI over the last really 10 years, but it's really been heating up in the last year or so across our industry and really across all industries and across the world. So Daniel, I'll let you introduce this slide, what we're going to talk about today, and then we'll get into it.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Just setting the stage for our discussion today. I think we'll just briefly kind of cover each of these topics. I think, AI is having a moment in medtech this year. I think we've been, hearing about the hype train over the last couple of years. I think you're seeing more and more of that real world application that is having impact this year. We'll talk about where that's happening. I think we'll also kind of talk about where the human AI partnership, because that's what it truly is. It is a partnership at the end of the day. AI is a tool, and the tool needs human intervention in order to be used effectively. I think we'll kind of break down how AI is impacting across the medtech lifecycle, from product development to R&D all the way through to manufacturing and commercial excellence. And then we'll talk a little bit about how the that is having an impact on enterprise value for some of these companies. And today's point, actually, if you want to see one of our previous articles on TMD, it's a relevant one. We actually just wrote about this recently for the magazine. We'll wrap it up with practical takeaways that MedTech leaders should consider when thinking about leveraging AI at their organizations. And then, please, as Jake mentioned, feel free to start sending your questions our way, and happy to take those during the call during the webinar or at the end. But let's start at a high level, and I think this really has been a strong year for adoption for AI, and I think just looking at the big picture, I think everybody the market analysis are saying that you're going to reach 45 billion market size just for AI within healthcare by 2028. Now that is MedTech and pharma and some other segments, but MedTech is one of the fastest growing segments for AI, and a big part of that is because MedTech collects data. MedTech generates a lot of data with their devices, and that is very powerful to be leveraged in AI applications. I think you're seeing the signs of it with, you've got over 1,500 FDA authorized AI-enabled devices now. That's up from just about 200 5 years ago. So you're seeing an acceleration year in and year out. Those devices hit the market. Part of the reason for that is you're getting a real compression in the development cycle to where you can get device discovery and drug development up to 3 times faster than you could before because of the leveraging on AI. I think companies that came in there earlier along, like GE Healthcare and J&J, I think started using that both on the development side, but also on the manufacturing side, and have really seen measurable results, on the manufacturing side of up to 30% reduction in some of their manufacturing defects by using AI-powered vision systems. So you're seeing it across the MedTech lifecycle, and it's really no longer about should we use AI, it's how do we implement it, and how do we implement it responsibly. And I think responsibly is a good kind of word to hone in on there, because I think in leveraging AI, you do want to be responsible in how you use it. And it really takes an effective partnership to use AI and the way it should be used. And I think AI really excels at pattern recognition, and as AI advances, those patterns are becoming more complex, right? Whereas humans excel at the responsibility, right, and the oversight. Right. So I think you've seen AI really take more ownership in image analysis and anomaly detection. And I think those are some of the earlier ones I think a lot of us are probably more familiar with around, different imaging situations and diagnostics, but really it comes at the high volume, repetitive tasks. I think even more claims management, right? Different types of manufacturing quality components. You see a lot more opportunity for AI to step in and provide impact there. Supply chain demand forecasting. I already mentioned on the other slide, some of the product development and really kind of iterating that the virtual prototyping earlier on. We've spoken to a number of companies actually that are using AI early on in the development life cycle and are seeing significant shifts in how they're able to really improve on their product development. But of course, humans remain essential to this partnership, right? I think you still need humans for that final clinical judgment and diagnosis, right? You still need to have that accountability on the clinical side. When it comes to having the regulatory submissions, you still need to have a human that is accountable for making sure that it is all up to snuff, because AI is not perfect, and AI doesn't know everything, right? You need to have people that really have the strategic creativity and clinical understanding and how you approach the market, right? Because AI is not going to step into the hospital and start performing any operations. So you need that personal intelligence, right, to bring that. And then in M&A, it's relationship driven, right? And no computer is gonna buy your company. You really have people that really get together and make that deal happen. And I think where you're seeing that convergence and where you're seeing that partnership in practice the most right now, and we'll get into some more of these examples as we move forward, is in the diagnostics segment where AI flags the anomaly, but then the radiologist still steps in to make the diagnosis, right? And we've had firsthand experience in the surgical planning side, and we'll get into that a little bit more in a future slide around how AI can generate the plan for the surgeon, and then the surgeon go ahead and adapts it or edits it, customizes it, and then approves it before going in and executing on it. And then also with regulatory, AI can really give you a head start on submitting regulatory documents, but the human still needs to be in there to have oversight and review and have accountability for that. So I think again, AI amplifies human judgment. It doesn't replace it. All right, Dave, and with that, I'll turn it over to you to talk a little bit about how AI is having an impact across each of these segments of the life cycle.
Yeah, thanks, Daniel. Excellent overview. So when you think about AI across the MedTech life cycle, it's something that really has evolved very rapidly over the last decade. I think AI has been talked about for probably for 20 years about us coming, but it's really been in the last decade that it started to be implemented. And I think it started really more in terms of thinking about different parts of the MedTech life cycle in terms of product development and being used in software, and thinking about diagnostics, as you mentioned, being used in surgical planning. It's also being used when you think about how you go about your product development and thinking about product ideas, thinking about IP, IP management, IP freedom to operate, and thinking, the regulatory pathway. But it's really interesting when a group of engineers, and the good news about AI right now in our industry, there's a lot of discussion around just globally and on a macro level around AI, and is it going to replace jobs and that sort of thing. And that who knows the actual answer on that as time evolves. But the good news for now, right now, is actually just making jobs more efficient. It's making everybody more productive. And in terms of R&D, high quality engineers are being able to create algorithms a little more efficiently, being able to test them out faster. And so actually what we're seeing is an acceleration in time to market from the R&D being able to utilize AI. So the ability to get to commercialization utilizing AI is a net positive so far in our industry. And then you think about clinical and commercial things like the surgical planning that we've discussed. Everybody's probably pretty aware of the robotics that is going on. Started with Intuitive Surgical like 3 decades ago, and at the time when they first started, there wasn't so much AI; it was more around advanced algorithms. But of course, as they've been able to develop their data, they have been able to make that into more machine learning and getting into AI and some of the things that evolve with that. You look in the orthopedic industry, robotics is becoming pretty heavy use there, led by Stryker's acquisition of Mako and getting that involved in the use for the knees. Zimmer went out and bought Rosa, Medtronic bought Mazor for the spine, and they're obviously implementing AI solutions to go along with the robotics. And then when we talk about clinical and commercial, and we'll talk about it more in a couple of slides. Commercial intelligence is important when you're going to market. It's really challenging in today's environment to understand how you make a salesperson productive. And so you have to think about how do you go to market, where's your sales channel going to be, who's going to be in your sales channel, and who are they going to target, and how are they going to reach those people? And AI is becoming involved with that. And then you think in terms of manufacturing, and I think a lot of people that read TMD are involved in manufacturing, so they're probably very aware of a lot of this. But Industry 4.0 started to be talking about probably a decade or so ago, and being implemented in terms of being able to have automation on the factory floor, and they've talked about lights out type of production using machine vision and quality inspection, where you didn't have to have anybody in the facility in some cases if you have a big enough job to be able to run. You can also use AI to be able to predict your maintenance. And when you think about the quality of your supply chain and supply chain forecasting, it's being implemented now, and it's really becoming more important as we move forward in this macro supply chain environment that has really evolved in the last decade. From where companies' supply chain was always important to manufacturing, but global supply chain management has really been critical in today's environment where companies are selling on a worldwide basis. And so where do you set up your manufacturing? Where do you set up your supply chain is really critical. AI can help with that, but it also will help even more detailed than how you manage that. And you manage your inventory, what you have, and then where you're going with it. And then some interesting things related to software and development, manufacturing with digital twins, and that we can talk more about later. And then operational excellence. is KPIs. A lot of people in this audience probably recognize they probably work with KPIs every single day, and the ability to use AI for operational excellence, inventory optimization, demand forecasting, workforce upskilling, and cybersecurity and compliance are all just examples of where AI is going to use in the MedTech cycle. I'll leave it to you, Dan, to move on to the next slide.
All right, there you go, Dave.
All right, so we talked about a little bit about our R&D across the product development value chain, and we talked about our R&D time to market, and this really has been beneficial. I think it's been a boon to engineers in our industry. I'm sure maybe there has been some anecdotal situations, but overall, we're not hearing of any major situations where people are losing their jobs in R&D because of AI. It's really more actually becoming more powerful and making those jobs more efficient and more critical to the organization because they can actually do more in-house versus having to outsource some of these things and being able to do the product design, feasibility, be able to do the regulatory documentation, think about the suppliers, the really supply chain management. And so being able to reduce supply chain up to 20% in development time at companies that are really using digital design backbones. So that's having a very positive impact. Getting into businesses, thinking about profitability, being able to use AI is really helpful because the more you can measure and the more you can impact those measurements, the more you can improve your performance. And that's being able to use an OpEx examples across the industry in terms of helping to deliver commercial intelligence that creates revenue growth, and then also can create productivity lift across the organization, including like forecast accuracy, salesperson productivity, and cash flow that helps the enterprise. And then thinking about clinicians, because those are really, for a lot of companies in this industry, that's the backbone is you want to impact patients, which is one of our last points on this slide. But before that, before you get to the patient, you're impacting clinicians, and they won't adopt your product unless it's easy for them to use. And so if you're able to figure out ways that make it easier in surgical planning, to be able to use a solution to be able for that clinician in surgery, or in case of in practice, being able to use an AI scribe to drop clinician burnout, that's been measurable, that's been helpful. And so clinicians can actually enjoy spending more time with a patient and let the AI scribe actually do the transcription of what happened in that appointment, and a lot of times even generate the revenue cycle management that comes from that. And then patient outcomes, of course, that's one of the reasons. So a lot of us are in this industry, patients, and help patients improve their outcomes. And really has been some measurable clinical impact. On pub science, we have references on that are available on request. But for example, one of the things that we were able to note and highlight is there are published research on AI-enabled triage for intracranial hemorrhage, showing significant reduction. So there's over 400 FDA-cleared AI radiology algorithms now in clinical use that to make those radiologists more productive, so they can read more. And what we've had some examples in working in some of these opportunities. The biggest impact is in being able to, when we talk to radiologists, it allows them to focus more on the edge cases, the ones that they're not sure, and to be able to get to the clear opportunity of whether this might be something questionable or not. So it makes it more efficient, but it also increases the value of their work and the quality outcome of their work. I think, Daniel, we can move on to the next one.
All right, thanks for that, Dave. I think now we're kind of getting into a little more of the real world examples of how companies are taking AI and leveraging that in the hospitals. I think starting with GE Healthcare, I think this is a pretty cool one. I think they've really kind of developed a machine learning MRI image reconstruction technology that helps them to get MRI scans faster, right, up to 30 to 50% faster. They get a better image quality, in a shorter amount of time, and so that hospitals can see more patients. I think GE Healthcare really knows how to make CFOs at hospitals smile, because that's something that's gonna really turn around to where you can get more patients into those MRI systems, and you're still getting better outcomes. And then, we sent this with a partnership with Ortoma, which actually we have familiarity from helping them to get a global distribution deal there. What they do is they help to provide that 3D surgical plan for clinicians before they get in there, and that can save hours of times for them to set up in the preparation before they get into the surgical suite. But of course, the surgeon still takes the opportunity to review the planning and step in and provide any customization or changes that they feel are necessary to have the best outcomes.
Yeah, and then Daniel, some as you know, we worked on that together. There are some additional benefits relative to that planning, because it helps the MedTech company. It helps the surgeon with the planning, but then it also helps the company with inventory planning, because it's able to tell that AI is able to tell the company, hey, we're going to probably need this size available in the operating room, where previously they didn't really know until they cut into the patient. So it has all kinds of positive opportunities. And then beyond that, even checking with the patient afterwards to see how the outcome came compared to what they were planning. So it's really been able to help with precision as well. And I think I'll go ahead and take the next one, Daniel, since I'm involved with this company. We're working with a company right now called Native Technologies. They're based in the UK, and they've developed an FDA cleared program they call it Osteocyte. It's AI based, and what they do is they actually take the routine orthopedic X-ray. So same workflow right now, which is important to get adoption on many things, is not changing the workflow. So routine current orthopedic X-rays, same clinical workflow. Basically, in the background, it flags patients with poor bone health, and it identifies fractures sometimes that are not visible otherwise, or in some cases, it just sees that people that are at risk due to poor bone health that otherwise would not be seen. So it's an opportunity to be able to help the medical practices be able to see patients and be able to be proactive with them before that it gets much worse. And provide treatment. It also helps with the MedTech companies to be able to be involved with that, helping the clinician to treat those patients. And so it is something that's going to be able to help more patients have better outcomes sooner, because if you have poor bone health, you have poor bone health. If you have a fracture, you have a fracture. And so many of those get missed, and now we're going to be able to treat them a lot faster. So we're right now working with Native to be able to find a strategic partner for them to really maximize the commercialization for that. I'll turn it back to you for the last one, Dan.
Oh, thanks, Dave. Yeah, I think with the last one, I think similar to continue with the pattern recognition in different applications, right? I think Medtronic has the GI Genius for first FDA de novo AI for colonoscopy, and I think what you're getting with that is real-time polyp detection during the procedure, which is pretty cool compared to where that used to be. So in clinical application, that means that you're getting 50% fewer missed polyps versus standard colonoscopies. And I think that's where you're getting more and more advanced in the pattern recognition to where you're assisting clinicians in being able to find these things. That it's obviously having real world impact and giving better outcomes for those patients to where they would have been missed previously to having this technology. So, four different companies, four different products, but I think in the end, what you're seeing is that the human still has the final say with each of these products.
And as somebody who's had polyps, I'm really grateful they've come up with this solution.
All right, Dave, how about the commercial side? You want to tell us a little bit more about how AI is having an impact there?
Yeah, this is another exciting area that AI is having an impact on our industry. It's really challenging. Everybody has frustration with their insurance companies on what I submit things and do I get covered for and that sort of thing. And that's not changing overnight. That's going to take a while for all that to flush through, of course, because it's really about the quality of the data. But I think AI is going to start helping that data to be able to get better. And I think you're actually going to start to see that improve over a period of time, this whole claims data universe that CMS uses and that insurance companies use. And as that happens, you'll be able to understand why you're being approved or why you're not being approved a lot quicker, and then the ability to appeal it will happen much faster. And we're starting to see that a little bit. It's probably not happening fast enough, especially if you're somebody that's involved with somebody that's that's has something that's been denied. But on the other hand, we're actually seeing more efficiency in getting some things approved and getting patients to treatment faster than they typically would see otherwise. And so basically helping the healthcare practitioner, helping them ultimately with their intelligence, what's going on in their practice, helping patients understand what's happening with them, and helping the insurance companies to figure out what's going on at a macro level to be able to facilitate the approvals and on a quicker basis. At the end of the day, most of these companies, if they have said they're going to cover something, they want to cover it. They want to cover it in the right way. So they're trying to get better, and this is a tool that's going to be able to help them do that as they get more accuracy in the data. It really comes back to data on inaccuracy in the procedural data, the prescription data that they're using. And then when you think about that database that's out there that's getting better, some companies really have gone to work and figured out how do they access that for the benefit of the patient, how they do it for the benefit of the practitioner, how they do it for the benefit of the MedTech company. So the couple examples, there's a company called S2N Health that has a solution called Rep Signal, and it's really an AI commercial intelligence platform that's helping MedTech companies as they come out with a new product or solution, or they may even have an existing product solution, but they're trying to be more efficient with their sales team. They'd be able to have an AI sales agent that's launching with them, working with their salespeople to find out if I have something like, for example, on the previous page that I want to go after surgeons that are focused on colonoscopies, and I have something that can help them with that. I can find out quicker now who those physicians are, surgeons are that are doing those types of procedures. From a drug company, what kind of who are the surgeons or the physicians that are prescribing my drug, and be able to be more efficient in finding those and having a conversation with them about positive improvements they can make in their prescribing behavior to be able to help the patient out. IQVIA is so S2N is on the kind of the startup and scale up phase of this, and they're making an impact. Then IQVIA is on the other side of this, a multi-billion-dollar company who has really gone out at this, and they've been doing things in terms of being able to use data positively for MedTech and pharma for decades. And they're being able to now, because they have this data, to be able to use AI and be able to understand how this can be used using agentic AI, which is basically, I think everybody understands, is it's really within AI. It's a pseudo. It's not really a person, but it's a pseudo mechanism to be able to go out and do things on your behalf. It's a tool to do things on your behalf, to be able to find solutions. In this case, they're working things similar to what S2N has done, to real-time targeting of these surgeons that are doing certain procedures, or they have a certain kind of data. How can we positively impact a certain realm of universe of patients that have a certain type of condition, both in class pharma and MedTech sales organizations? And really why that matters for sellers and buyers is the more efficient that they can become in this industry, then the more profitable they can be, and then the more they can really invest into back into the R&D that we've talked about, that's so important to the future of the industry. So it's really a very positive cycle that's taking place right now in AI across the industry, and these are some good examples so far.
All right. Well, thanks, Dave. And I think now we'll shift to manufacturing, where I think it's getting a little bit less of the headlines. You're seeing more of the AI and clinical impact, but I think you're seeing a lot of value happening on the manufacturing side. I think Stryker has built one of the largest 3D printing facilities in the world in Cork, Ireland. They've spent $200 million invested in that. They don't do this because it's trendy. They do this because of the actual value that they can leverage from that manufacturing facility. Right. I think you're getting models that are, built from digital, monitored real time, and traceable from the powder all the way to the patient. And that's really cool and really innovative from where we've come from the manufacturing side. J&J is investing across the manufacturing life cycle, right? I think they're doing digital QC sites, AI in their quality control, and digital integration. They're spending millions of dollars on really upgrading and improving on their manufacturing. Siemens Healthineers is leveraging AI-driven predictive manufacturing. I think Dave has mentioned it a few times, right? Leveraging digital twins so that you can really predict when maintenance is going to need to happen on your machines, right? I think downtime, as a lot of people on this would understand, downtime is not beneficial to any manufacturing organization. And the more that you can reduce downtime, and by predicting when those machines might need maintenance, the better off you're going to be. I think, as well as image analysis for different QC detection items. I think there's a lot of different ways in which these med tech manufacturers are leveraging AI to improve and provide margin efficiencies in their manufacturing facilities. And I think the market signal is that this is all accelerating rapidly to where it's projected to grow to a little over double from 90 billion to 185 billion by 2030. Dave, anything else you want to add to the manufacturing side before we move forward?
Yeah, I was just thinking as we were going through this, Daniel, that you go back to like Stryker and the additive manufacturing, and we were talking about manufacturing. I was thinking back again to the patient benefits that's coming from these advancements. For example, the ability to use AI for surgical planning, and then to be able, you'll need those tools and the algorithms to be able to create 3D printing for these medical implants. They're also creating patient-specific instruments and patient-specific implants that are improving the precision for the patient and the quality of the outcome for the patient as they get these implants, whether it could be for the spine, the knee, the hip, the shoulder. So it's continuing to across the whole cycle again of life in the medtech industry. It's not just manufacturing, but we're benefiting the patient as well. So we're getting to one of my favorite topics because people ask me all the time about AI and impacts, and I as we've been talking about for the last few slides, it certainly is positively impacting our industry in unique ways and exciting ways. But one of the things that I think back to one of the slides Daniel presented about the human interaction, it's really important to have. And so one of the things that I've said for a long time, it takes not just AI, but it takes strategic intelligence. So it's really AI plus SI equals the true value creation in our industry, whether that's inside the enterprise itself, across the OpEx, across the supply chain, across the manufacturing, or in terms of M&A, which obviously is where near and dear to our hearts because we live every day in deal making. So when you think about sellers and being able to enable themselves to be ready for market, definitely having some of these AI tools in place, it's really important now in 2026. It used to be companies could get away and talk, and they could talk about they knew what AI was. They knew about AI, whether they really did or not. So we saw some examples of that. But really, it's becoming now, if you don't have it adopted, it may be okay, but you need to be knowing what your AI roadmap is if you're thinking about selling your business, because everybody's understanding that this is a dynamically changing industry. And so you need to understand where it can apply and where it does not apply. That's okay too. But being able to describe that to a buyer, a potential buyer, is very important. Your recurring revenue models and being able to have those, if you happen to have software as part of your solution. Those that are going right now in terms of a traditional SaaS model, and those used to be premium types of sales in terms of the value of a company, because they were based on ARR, annual recurring revenue, instead of EBITDA itself. And now that's being pressured a little bit, the need for an AI solution to be part of the ARR is becoming more valued by buyers than historically. And I think that's just going to accelerate into the future as things are changing so rapidly in terms of software and AI. So that's important to understand if that's part of the solution you have and you're going to sell your company. The AI-driven quality and compliance that you have, basically being able to show the KPIs has always been there, and just being able to do it more effectively as you go forward. Understanding that you're going to be identified by potential buyers, using AI, so understanding what your digital footprint is, that does matter, and really the strategic intelligence to understand the relevance and the value of your AI relative to your company is important. Of course, your basics still matter. Your fundamentals matter. Your growth, your OpEx, your supply chain, all the things we've talked about. But really understanding the relevance and value of your AI in your business will help you to gain a premium and talking to an educated buyer. And buyers, of course, are using these tools because there's a lot of dry powder out there. Right now, this is one of our most active years ever in M&A. And it's because there's a lot of dry powder out there in the private equity, a lot of independent sponsors looking to buy companies. A lot of big private equity funds are looking to buy companies. They like to be in MedTech, because MedTech is a solid industry. It grows over time. Business can be sticky. And then, of course, the major strategics in the industry, they are very focused and growing. And M&A is at all-time highs right now. Companies are making acquisitions. Stryker, Boston Scientific, a lot of the majors have made major buys. Danaher just bought Massimo. So there's been big deals that are taking place, but then a lot of smaller deals as well. So it's going across the size and scale of the industry. So if you have a smaller company, you still can be in play both for the private equity and with strategics. If you have something that's with a value proposition to offer to them, and they're looking for you. And at the end of the day, we find that the basic fundamental, whether you have AI or not, but it might be enhanced value with AI, is that your value is in strategic fit, and then the timing of meeting the right buyer at the right place. And just a little plug, a good M&A advisor like MedWorld Advisors can help you understand how to explore those options on both the buy side and the sell side to be able to put those partnerships together. So if you have questions on that, reach out to us at any time.
All right, I think that's a good segue into what are some real world examples for M&A that we're seeing out there that they're based upon AI technologies. And I think, one of the first ones that, has happened out in 2025, Zimmer Biomet acquired Monogram Technologies. And I think, Zimmer already had the ROSA robot, but I think what Monogram brought for them was the AI and 3D imaging infrastructure that helps to guide the instruments with sub-millimeter precision. Right, so it's really provides some high level accuracy there, and I think for Zimmer, much faster to acquire that capability than to build it internally. That's kind of a classic strategic acquisition. GE Healthcare acquired Intelerad. I think we all know GE has dominated hospital imaging for quite a while now, but care delivery is shifting from hospitals to kind of outpatient ambulatory settings, and Intelerad had that AI cloud infrastructure that was really valuable to GE, so that they could really extend that continuity into ambulatory. And so that was, they paid a nice 2.3 billion to bring that in and help expand their reach in their channels. And Medtronic acquired CathWorks last year as well, an AI coronary diagnostics platform, right, where it assesses blood flow without any really invasive pressure wire. And Medtronic had a minority stake and was watching them for quite a while, and it really came to the right time once that technology was to the place to where they could scale that from there. But I think what we're seeing, and we talked about at the top of the webinar, is that there is for companies that have found out how to leverage AI in application in the real world, there is an AI premium, and we're seeing on average around 20% increase in average deal size for companies that are able to leverage AI in their applications versus those that don't have any AI technologies. And so we're going to see that gap continue to increase in future years.
And I think Daniel, coming out of the COVID period, in 2020. What we really saw was an increase in funding and quote unquote digital health, with a lot of that focus coming from the VC level to the startup companies related to AI. And so now some of those companies are starting to mature now. You're starting to see some of those turn into to deal activity, which is increasing the market landscape in M&A.
That's absolutely right, Dave.
So some practical takeaways for MedTech leaders. Obviously, AI is a C-level strategy that has to be thought through at the board level, but then implemented across with KPIs across the organization. So it's helpful to think about auditing your AI readiness, and it doesn't mean that you have to jump. You don't have to panic about AI. You don't have to jump today, but you need to have a plan. You need to understand every area in your company where AI might be relevant, and what would be the right pathway to get to an implementation across each of those functional areas in your company, from product development through the manufacturing floor to the supply chain to OpEx and to your commercial intelligence. And don't have to bite off everything at one time, but just have a plan. And it could be a 5-year plan. And understand what areas are going to have the biggest impact first, and be able to start implementing one project at a time. It's important to do one thing right than five things not so right, as most leaders know. So upskill with your people, and you can automate right away or not automate right away. But the key thing is getting your people trained. And it's funny, when you can get some nice advanced machines, you can actually a lot of times get training to be able to get people that previously would have been scared of seeing a machine that had a lot of buttons on it. You can actually get them to a point where they can be comfortable, and that can actually, you can see your workforce go from somebody that's actually sometimes kind of bored with what they're doing, but they're actually kind of programming a machine. You can kind of see the lights in their eyes when they do that. So that's a organizational values decision, how you want to treat that, but it's an opportunity. Building your governance framework is important because the regulatory landscape is moving fast. Frankly, the government is changing its landscape all the time on how it's thinking about cybersecurity and AI. FDA though they've really moved in the last 5 years from not even really totally understanding AI themselves. And I'm not sure they still fully understand it, because who really fully understands it, but they definitely have got their arms around what they want to approve and what they don't want to approve. So it's good to understand that because they're giving out nice guidance these days related to that. And they're definitely improving their focus on cybersecurity, which is critical because, if somebody has inside an implant that is tied to software, they definitely don't want to have a cybersecurity issue for anyone. Track your AIs, throughout all the things that you're doing each and every day. EBITDA multiple drivers, based upon the profit you can create through the AI implementation and your company, you will benefit from. And then think about whether you're thinking about exiting in a year, 3 years, 5 years. Think about where your AI story is today and where it's going to be then. And again, you don't have to do it all at one time. You can have a plan and do the most impactful things first. And typically for MedTech company, it might be the things that would impact patient outcome first, and then a clinician adoption, and which impacts your growth, and then that impacts your manufacturing, and so on and so forth. It's a cycle, right, that we've talked about.
Good points, Dave. And one of the things I actually thought of when you were talking about the FDA is actually, I don't think we mentioned that the FDA has actually even internally implemented their own review and analysis AI tool called ELSA that they're leveraging Claude to develop and help them to really review submissions much quicker. So I would say if the slow moving FDA has already identified that they need AI to help them move quicker into the future, I think that says a lot about how other companies should also be thinking about how it can help them as well.
Good point.
All right. Well, we do have a couple questions coming in, Dave. How about if I start to see what we have and can send them your way? Let's see here. We have, are you seeing that AI capability has become a primary acquisition thesis for MedTech companies, or is it still largely an add-on consideration to the underlying clinical or commercial story? What do you think?
Yeah, I think that it's not the primary driver of most acquisitions, unless it's a specific AI. Can talk about it in a minute. I think the acquirers are looking for good quality growth companies that are addressing a clinical unmet need. That's been the same in MedTech for decades, and the same in MedTech now. However, if you are being able to use AI to be able to expand your growth story with clinicians and be able to improve the patient outcomes, be able to impact your profitability through your OpEx, then you might get some premium for that. So it's right now it's a value add. It's a plus.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's certainly situational to the transaction. You do definitely see some transactions that are fully based upon the AI technology they develop, but you've also seen some that are more just we want to make sure that you're implementing it effectively, so it can be a mix too. Who is capturing the economic value when it comes to AI in MedTech?
Who is capturing the AI value?
The economic value.
The economic value.
When it comes to AI in MedTech.
Yeah, I think it goes across the ecosystem, as we've talked about throughout this presentation. So the economic value should start with thinking about what we do in this industry, is the patient, right? So hopefully over time, if we implement these things right, the patient's going to get better value in terms of the services that they're getting from the procedures that they're getting or the drugs that they're getting. Going back to the clinician, going back to the payer, going back to the MedTech company, all the way through. So economic value is driven really across the cycle. It's kind of a general question, so I'm giving a general answer, so I hope that's helpful.
All right, and we got another one here. How much are large strategics looking outside for new AI solutions versus developing them in-house?
Yeah, that's a great question. The classic buy versus build, right? Or build versus buy. That's been something that's been true when I've been on the corporate side working for companies like Tyco and Covidien and Medtronic. And when you're thinking about an acquisition, even decades ago, it's always about, do I go out and do I build something myself, or do I go acquire another company that's doing something similar to be able to get in the market faster? I think that you're seeing that happen and evolve in terms with AI. And the interesting part around that is I think it's happening, the acceleration of that is happening very quickly. So it's something that I think you're going to see a lot more buy versus build decisions from large strategic companies around, hey, you know what? We probably could go build that ourselves, but if we can go add on this other company that's doing this effectively, let's do it, because we're going to be able to accelerate our growth faster. And we typically, as a big company, take longer to do things. So they do value smaller companies' ability to get them to market faster if they're doing it right and demonstrating that through a scalable model.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, Dave. I think you're seeing a real-time acceleration of the adoption curve of AI within each of these organizations. And as these strategics get more comfortable with leveraging AI, they become even more comfortable with developing those solutions in-house. And you're seeing that shift with the corporate dev, the C-suite teams this year that in some of the conversations that we're having. It's really interesting to see in real time.
And along those lines, they're not afraid to do some hires, aqua hires, where they acquire companies to have that talent in-house, to have that. So it really almost becomes a classic, build versus buy situation. And sometimes the build makes sense, and sometimes the aqua hire makes sense, and sometimes to go buy, because it depends on how far you've gone in the market. If you're in the market creating a share, they're going to want to grab you. I can assure you of that.
Awesome. Well, guys, I do have a personal question when it comes to this. Where does like HIPAA kind of fall in with the use of AI when it comes to MedTech?
The first answer, Jake, is yes.
Okay.
It's very it's been there. It's probably clumsily adopted over the last decades, right? I think everybody that's involved in the industry understands that. But it's been getting better, and I think as people have been developing AI tools in the last 10 years, they have to be very cognizant of HIPAA, and probably it's become more important. So it's a good question, Jay, because I think as we're aware of people developing it, they're very aware that it has to be part of what they're doing with AI. They can't violate HIPAA just because it's AI.
Right. Sure. Well, yeah, I mean, that does look like you guys have answered all of the questions coming in. We do still have a few more minutes scheduled, so if there are any last minute ones, you guys can get them in now. But I would like to take this time to thank our 2026 webinar series sponsors. Once again, that's Kennametal and Heimer USA. And once again, it looks like I said no more questions coming in. So, I mean, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time and expertise today. Once again, we have Daniel Shepard and Dave Shepard from MedWorld Advisors. You can catch them in the latest issue of today's medical developments. So, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time and your expertise today.